Hello and welcome to my video. This painting I originally started around about, well, I uploaded it on the 3rd of October and it's now ready for me to make a few changes, and the main change that I'm going to make is to the sky. This was just put on here as a foundation for what's coming. This is all dry, the trees are dry, so I can paint pretty well over them with the sky and then reveal them again by wiping back, and that will give these quite a nice sort of misty, interesting sort of profile against the sky. So here we go. Now, one thing I will say before I really get into this, if you watch part 1 of this video, you might notice, some people seem to notice it, but there was something very wrong with the sound. It came out as distorted, a little bit garbled, and I just bought a new sound system, and obviously I was doing something wrong, so hopefully I've got it right this time. Now I've taken some advice from some people. Let me just move that camera just a little bit here. I've moved the camera to the right. Hopefully this will keep me out of the way. And I've tilted it back a little bit, so I think you'll get a better angle, and I hope so anyway. So what are we going to do here? Well, I want to, obviously I'm working on the sky, but I want something that's going to be a little, well, let me just go through a couple of things. At the moment, this is basically Japanese red for the sky, which is wiped back with paper, and then just ultramarine blue. There may be a bit of white in it, I'm not sure, I can't remember now. And then I blended them together roughly, because that doesn't matter, because a lot of the division part here from the blue to the red is going to be hidden. So it'll just appear to be having a little bit of a glow on the horizon, but I may put some low down clouds. But for the moment, all I want to do, and it's quite a dry brush, there is oil in this, but I haven't sort of overdone the oil. Because glazing, you can do glazing without too much oil. Don't have to actually swamp the thing in oil. And one thing I don't want to do is drip. This is almost straight out the tube. A little bit in there, not much. So let's get a little bit of shape in the clouds. Now, I'm not going to say, I usually do this, and I usually put my foot in it. I sometimes, quite often in fact, I say, right, I'm going to keep this really brief. I'm not going to put a time constraint on this. It's going to be as long as it takes. So if it takes a long time, it takes a long time. But I don't think it should be too long, although people seem to like long videos. So anyway, and also I just want to, before I get going, I just want to point you in the direction of my latest video that I put up, and I'll put a link on the screen now. It should appear in the top right hand corner. That's a painting that I'm giving away. Now, the way you get this painting is first of all, you subscribe to my channel and just leave a comment, and I'm going to use a random comment picker bit of software, and that will get all the comments and sort of, put them into a random order, and the one that comes out first will get the painting. No strings attached. I'll pay the postage. It won't be framed. That's up to you, but I can recommend a type of frame. What else? Yeah, and absolutely free. So if you're interested, go and click on that link and see what you think. Oh, and what you'll see in the video isn't quite finished. It will actually change a little bit, and there'll be some more sort of twinkly bits added to the landscape. So there we've got a little bit of shape up the top there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of white to that and just tone it down. Well, not toning it down, actually, it's lightening it. Why I said toning down. Okay, so a few little bit of, maybe just toning down. Okay, so just a few little shapes up there. And as usual, what I'm trying to do is get over the idea that skies aren't actually that difficult. You just have to go for it. Paint as though nobody's watching. Chances are they're not, especially if you're in a room like here, nobody's watching me, just the camera, which is bad enough. That's why I don't actually peer on camera much. I'd rather be either behind it or totally out of the frame if I can get out of the frame, but I get much more enjoyment behind the camera. Now, as I said, I'm going to start bringing the sky down over the trees. I don't have to go right across the trees. I can just go around the edge, like so. And then I can wipe away just the edges. You don't have to, you could go right across. I don't want to. If I'm going to add a bit of a glaze to the trees, if I decide to, this will make it easier if I just skirt around the edges. Okay. So as you can see, the gradation between the pinky colour and the blue is starting to go. I can make it go even more so it's really subtle, like that. So it's hidden now. It's like there isn't a final end to the clouds, to the glow, if you see what I mean. And I can go right down to the bottom. And then I could wipe away a little bit along the bottom if I decide. But what I might do is just put a little bit of a mist over those trees through there, just to mute them down a little bit. Okay. Now, let's get a few other colours in there. I think we'll get a little bit more. The red, by the way, the red I'm using now in the sky is just red ochre. I haven't used any fancy red, like Japanese red, which I use often. But red ochre mixed with the sort of bluey grey colour will give you quite an interesting shade to your sky, like so. If you can see that, just adds a little bit of warmth to it. There's lots of ways. You can use all kinds of reds. Although I put up, every now and then I put up a public health warning about alizarin crimson. If you're going to use alizarin crimson, use it sparingly, because I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Once you get alizarin crimson on a painting, you'll never get rid of it. It's a very strong colour. You need a tiny amount. I think I have one tube, probably one tube left, and I think that's the third tube I've bought in the last 50 years, because it never ends. Okay, so let's get some of that tone up here as well, just a hint. I like skies that are more than blue and white, because that's the way they are. You can get all kinds of colours. Now, I had a comment this morning, in fact, so I'm going to try and answer that. Somebody said, how do you make clouds look round rather than flat? There's quite an easy way of doing it. In fact, I did it on my Zoom class last night. If I attempt to find another brush here, or maybe I can just use the one I've got. Let me just try that. So if I just give the brush a bit of a wipe, I don't need to get all the paint off, just one corner, like so, just to take most of it away. Now, if I get a little bit of white, I'll be doing more white work on this later. Supposing I have a white cloud here, just something like that, and I want to make that look round. There's several ways of doing it. One is that you fade off the bottom a little bit, but of course you'll be left with quite a flat white at the top. And the next thing you can do, I'll be undoing this in a minute, this is purely just to show you, is to just put a little bit of grey or whatever your tone is in the middle of the cloud, like so. And I hope you can see that. But it starts to give it a more bulbous, is that right? Bulbous nimbus, it gives it a rounder look because obviously you've got a shadow underneath. The shadow could be the top. It's usually not the top. Although this painting is going towards, it could be the evening, so the light may hit the clouds from the bottom, in which case you would move the shadow to the top. But it's basically that. Just put a tone in it so that you have light, dark and light, and that will give it a round look. I might leave that one there, actually, it's not bad. And the reason I say that is because I will be going over it with a big brush soon and totally smudging everything. I nearly said totally ruining everything. And of course that can happen. I've got some really light grey on here. Now, as much as I like the sort of red glow behind the cliff, I might put a little bit of light there as well. So, for instance, so there could still be the glow, but just behind this part of the hill, it could have a cloud, which is just appearing and maybe continuing across there a little bit, and possibly there. Let's just see how that goes. Okay, so as you see, I've obliterated the tree there, doesn't matter, my favourite saying, because we'll get it back. When you're painting underneath it's dry and you paint over it, everything is retrievable. So I'm going to carry on this little theme here. I quite like a little bit of light cloud there, and then I'll continue it behind the tree coming across that way. So we get the feeling of clouds going behind objects rather than following the contour. Never follow the contour of your tree. If you paint clouds across here, don't go up and around it and then down and then up and around, because that just does not happen. Okay. Yeah, this is white, virtually no oil. There's a tiny bit of oil left on the brush, but nothing much, nothing to write home about. So let's have a little bit of a burn of cloud in the middle. When I say a burn, I mean a little bit of brightness. Just a touch there, I think. So what I'm doing, you see, I'm working on getting movement here. Movement is one of those things that I'm also often asked about. How do you get movement? One of the questions that mankind has been trying to answer for millennia. It's flow, but it's not obvious flow. In other words, if I just did a band of white cloud that bent and then moved across there, that would just look wrong. It's got to be the theme of what's going on. In other words, I've got to, let's have a little hint, as I said, a little bit of a hint of lightness there. And then we could take something that leads us, you know, a little tiny bit of light here. It's as I said, it's one of these things that's hard to explain, so you just have to do it and then hope people latch onto it. So I'm going to do a sort of, I'm going to do a that. There's a that there, look. Does that make sense? I'm painting things called that's. So that might look nice up there. Just depends how you feel. I think there should be, right, yes, I think there should be a hot spot here. So just put it in. As I said, the trees have not gone forever. A little tiny bit in there. And a bit more continuing off that way. So I'm painting wet on dry at the moment. Okay. So before I use the big brush on it, before I reveal the tree, again, I will do the big brush work. Once I've got all my smudging, or as I call it, smudgery, sorted out, then I'll start to pick out the trees and bring them back. So, it's one of those skies. You know the type of sky that's got little dotty clouds in it? I don't know what it's called. It's not a mackerel sky, it's no idea what it is. It's a sky. Sky of my mind. A weird and twisted place. So, let's see, we've got a little bit of cloud down here. Let's have a little bit more, just there. And do we want any over here? Do we want to keep the red? Of course, this is a rhetorical question because you can't answer me, but put in the comments. I like comments. And tell me what you would have preferred. Do you like what I'm doing, or do you think I should leave that red? I'm going to leave a hint of a little bit of red. So if I'm almost dry brushing over the pink here, hardly touching it. So if I get a piece of paper and then just do that, I can bring that white misty colour over the red without leaving a brush mark, because I'm not using a brush. And let's go into this bit here to actually bring the mountain back. Just to show you how easy it is. And I'm aware that it's leaving a nice mist on the top of the mountain. I quite like that. So I'm going to try and bring the sky over more. I'm going to darken the top a little bit to give that appearance. So it's this. Is it the same brush? No, I think I'll use a different one. I know people they've asked me all the time, where do I get my brushes? Well, I get them from France because I live here. And there is no manufacturer's name. It's just an extremely cheap decorating brush. It's bristle, possibly with the odd bit of nylon in there, but not that you'd know, quite frankly. I'm pretty sure it's bristle. And so yeah, I can't tell you where I get them other than it's a shop called Monsieur Bricolage, and bricolage meaning like, you know, a DIY shop in France. It's quite a nice name actually, Brico, when you think of bricks. You can buy bricks there, Bricolage. So I'm going to do something a bit strange here in a minute with a bit of light blue. But over here, I think we'll just put in a few more light spots. And then, in fact, there's some blue showing through up there, quite like that. You can see that quite strongly, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to leave that. Let's just muck that one up a bit, because I didn't quite want that effect. Okay. Now, pale blue. The blue I'm going to use is one that always pops up in my paintings, and that's this one, royal blue. In France it's called Blue Rex. I'm sure they don't pronounce it like that. It'd be something like, in fact blue would be bleu, Rex, I don't know. Maybe they just say Rex. Blue, bit of oil, but mostly blue, mostly paint rather, and I'm just going to shove that in there. So, what do you think? Do you think painting skies is easy? Seems to be. I mean, I guess I'm lucky. I find skies actually, trust me, I'm not showing off. I find them incredibly easy. They're much easier than the landscape part, I think, to me anyway. But everyone's different. I think it's because of my attitude to the sky. It's there's some blue in there too. Why not? I think it's because the nature of clouds. You see, you have to remember that they're not stiff. They've got a fluffiness, windiness about them. Here we go, stating the obvious. So you have to try and get that in your brushstroke so that it's quick and wispy and, you know, fresh. Keep it fresh looking. I think we're going to lose some of that pink there. I quite like the pink down here, but I'm not sure about that there. And let's see what we can do. faded up into whatever's above it. And almost time for the big brush. Yeah, why not? Let's try it. So, which big brush shall we use? How about the one that I've got closest to hand? Ah, yeah, now this reminds me, in my lesson that I gave last night, someone said I think someone asked, what sort of blues do you use? And I get asked this a lot. Okay, so here's my answer, and it sounds a bit silly. If I'm working here, and I've got my paints next to me, if I need a blue, it sounds crazy, the one that is closest to me that I can get quickly is the blue that I'll use. I hope that makes some kind of sense. It works for me because I can make something out of most of the blues that I have. It's not that hard. I mean, you know, it's just blue. If you want it darker, you can add something to it to darken it down, or if you want it lighter, it's obvious what you do in that case. You just add a bit of white. So there we go. Okay, so I'm just touching this very lightly, and the clouds appear. I don't mind I'm going over the trees because there is so little paint on this, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, the amount of blue that is on that edge there is minuscule. The thing about blue, you see, it has this amazing covering power. It's a very strong pigment generally, and particularly this blue. It's a wonderful colour, and it is the colour of a blue sky. I feel a little bit of contradiction there. Blue skies tend to be darker at the top, lighter at the bottom, so it's the bottom part of the sky usually. Okay, so let's just mush up the edge a little bit. I have to remember what's underneath here, because I've got to go back in there and get it and retrieve it. And there is some pink showing through this tree. I quite like that. I can probably, if I decide I don't like it, I can just go over it with a bit of sap green afterwards. And I will be working on the trees very briefly, and maybe this will be my shortest video for months actually. Okay, a little bit of red just there. Okay, now that bit behind there, I'm just going to pull the sky down a bit. Okay, right, time to get the paper on that. Piece of paper. If the paint decides it's not going to come off, in other words, if your painting has a lot of texture here, you know, from the original painting of the tree, you may find that you can't wipe off successfully, not completely anyway. So then you would add a bit of oil to the paper just to loosen the paint a bit. Now that's got a nice misty look on the top, and I really like that. Now, as I said, if I wanted to get rid of that a bit more, all I would do is just get a little bit of oil on the paper, which I've got now, and if I wipe it again, hope you can see that, the strength of the tree comes back. I'm going to do that a little bit in a few places. But of course I will be going around the edge of the tree. Not much, just a bit. Unless, of course, I change my mind, and then I wait for doing that. But we'll see. Now, the tree has disappeared under that little bit of white there, so let's just take it away, because what I don't want any angles, you know. Trees generally don't have right angles. So I can just do this and get my tree back. While I'm working through this, I'll just mention that if you want to come to a Zoom class, all you have to do is look for the link in the description box below. You'll find a link there, I hope, and you can join one of my classes. They're generally held at French time 4 p.m. They last. I paint for an hour. Sometimes I do one painting, sometimes two. I worked on two last night. This one I'm just going to put on the screen, which is just I suppose about half done, maybe a third done. I'll be working on that again. And this one, this is the second one I worked on, where I just did a bit of glazing and just sort of, you know, sparked it up a little bit. And once the painting is done, we basically all just hang out and have a chat. It's really good fun. It's sort of turning into a group of friends, having a twice monthly meeting. And I thoroughly enjoy it, actually. It's really nice. Okay, so I'm still wiping the cloud down here, but I like that mist. Hope you can see that. I will try and zoom in. Okay, so as you can see, this makes painting trees. Well, if this type of tree, let me just make sure that's clear. You know, I don't do photographic paintings, I do tonalism, and I like the smudgy edginess of things, and several reasons for me doing that is that I'm a career graphic designer, illustrator, or have been rather, and I spent my life doing all kinds of high detailed stuff for people over the years, and I just don't want to do it anymore. I like the relaxed nature of this type of painting, and I like the immediacy of it. Everything happens quite quickly. So yeah, Zoom classes, they're all good fun, and not very expensive. I think everyone tells me that the price is reasonable. In fact, I think some of the people in the class even said I should up the price, which I won't be doing. I think it works out somewhere around 27 euros. But for that you get, and I think it's a little bit unusual, although I'm sure some other artists are doing it, but you get to hear stuff firsthand, rather than a video which, you know, in a video you can only impart a certain amount of information. And if you are in a live class with someone, you get the time to ask the questions that weren't answered in the video. And I'm sure that is really helpful to some people, because I know that when I've looked at videos on YouTube, I watch a video and I think, oh, why didn't they cover this or cover that? And of course they didn't, and it's too late then. They may reply to a comment below. Some people don't reply to any comments. I've never quite understood the logic there, because I always think if people make a comment, if I can reply, then I will. If I can't, because I'm doing other stuff, I won't. But it's all down to time at the moment. Let's put a little bit more of that glow back just there. There's a bit of mist in front of the tree, which I don't want. I'm not sure. I may do a few things. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of greenery, but I may work on these tree trunks. And when I do that, I'll zoom you in so you can actually see what's going on. Right. Now, right. So we don't want that band of fog. there. Okay. Right. I think quite an interesting sky, but as I said, I'm going to just darken the top a little bit. So let's get a brush that I can make dark. I've got blue on this one. Do I need any more blue before I wipe it off? So to darken the top, I'm using ultramarine blue with Payne's grey. As you may probably have noticed by now, my palette is limited. I like to keep things as simple as possible because if you're teaching painting, you don't want to frighten anyone off, and you don't want to make it too complicated to start with. By that I mean you don't want people to think it's complicated. Painting isn't really. It's one of the most relaxing things you can do, and in fact I consider it to be almost my own personal therapy. I know that without painting I would go completely bonkers. Because of certain, everyone has stresses in their life, and I have mine, but this definitely keeps me going. Right, so that's quite an interesting sky there. I'm quite pleased with that. I'm going to just make a couple of little changes before I get onto the tree, and the change is basically going to be here, because I think that change from this up here to this blue was a little bit too sudden. Needs something, a few little flurries in there. So is that going to be enough flurry, I wonder? Oh, not quite. A little bit more down there. And okay, right. So we've got a bit of a red glow behind this tree here, a hint of it over there. We've got this sudden belt of light here. Now I'm going by, you see I'm looking at the painting, but I'm also looking in the viewfinder, and that gives me an idea of what the painting looks like from a distance. So it saves me walking across the room looking back at it. And it's quite a useful little visual aid. Now, I think we're definitely going to have something over here. Like so, just a little bit of why nottery, because it looks good, which of course I suppose you could argue one of the main things about painting, especially when it's an imaginary landscape like this, it's not what's correct, it's what looks right. Because if you paint something from a photograph and you copy that photograph exactly, it may look strange, because what looks good in a photo doesn't necessarily look good in a painting. So you have to be careful what you put in, what you take out. Right. Now, okay, so to the landscape part. Right, so I'm going to work on that tree first. Before I do anything around the edge, I'm going to just put a few little bits of light hitting that. Now, some people have said, where is the light coming from in your paintings? The thing you have to realise with landscapes, not all of them, but quite a lot, the light bounces all over the place. It can bounce off the clouds that are up there, and it can bounce off a cloud over here and cast a light there. It's not easily defined. And I prefer to keep it a little bit loose, because I'm after, as I said, what I think looks correct or attractive, what makes a good picture. And sometimes just one source of light is fine, but you know, keep it in mind, light bounces. And particularly in my paintings, it's very bouncy light. So let me just do something there quickly. Something bothering me. Let's get away all the bother. There we go. That is now a botherless painting, I think. Okay. So to do that, this is the one time when I really use small brushes. And my favourite brush for doing that, you can use the edge of a palette knife, and I might even do that. I might add a few sort of sticky twig things. But really this is going to be very simple. I'm using this thing. This is called a rigger. It's a very thin brush. Sign writers use these because the fact that they have long bristles, just put some oil on it so it's formed properly. It's got long bristles, so it holds a lot of paint. If you want to paint a long thin line, you need a brush that's going to hold the paint and then let it seep out on the end. If you use a tiny brush, I mean, you know, like that long, you're going to paint spots. You need something that you can keep going. And all I'm going to do on this, because I've got that light area here, now where that comes from, who knows, it comes from up there somewhere. But it doesn't matter because it looks attractive. So all I'm going to do is just get a bit of white on the brush, not a lot of oil, it's not drippy, okay? Sometimes I use my hand as a brace, so the bottom edge of the easel is here. If I put my fingers on it, let me show you that, make more sense than that. You can use a stick leant across the painting, you know, which is called a mahl stick, M-A-H-L, I think. Or you can do this. I just rest my fingers on there, put my hand on my hand, so to speak, and that just steadies it up a bit. So tiny, tiny little bit of white, just a few beads of it here, and it doesn't have to be a continual line. It can just be a few dots, like so. It's just to enhance that effect of the light doing its thing down there. And I'm aware that this tree is actually thick, thin and thick, sort of. We don't want that. The thing is, a tree starts out a certain width and gradually gets thinner. They don't usually get thicker. It's unusual, anyway. So just a few little bits of light catching the edge of that tree there. It's very simple to do. What you mustn't do is just paint a white line. The line that you paint has to be what they used to call in college a sensitive line, or a line that is searching. Does that make sense? In other words, if I was just to paint a straight line down there, that would be really, really boring. But if I can just do this sort of thing, where it catches the light every now and then, it becomes more interesting. Keep that in mind, it's worth knowing that. So let's have a bit more there, a touch here. Doesn't have to be everywhere, as I said. Be selective. A little bit there. And then maybe something down. Don't go overboard with the roots. If you're doing a painting that is highly detailed with roots, go as overboard as you want. But with something like this, a hint is all you need. If you do too much, it will look a bit wrong. So you see, that's sort of brought that tree to life a little bit. Not going to do much more on it. Some of the trees this side, I think I might just put a tiny touch. This is the extent of my detailing work nowadays. In other words, just add the odd highlight. There are some trees here, some very thin ones in the background, so I could bring one of them forward just a little bit with a few touches. Like that. Just adds what I call twinkle. Just a little bit. And the odd spot in the undergrowth is actually doesn't go amiss, because it can make undrawn detail. In other words, there's something in there just catching the light, like so. Who knows what it is? Could be anything. Could be a little stump or something. In fact, let's have a stump with a twig growing off it there, just to feed the eye a bit. And I think that's all on that part. So I'm going to move the camera without cutting it this time. I won't cut the video because all I have to do is swing it across and lock it. There we are. Right. So over here, now this is one of the things I think I mentioned, if you can understand what I'm saying in the part one, don't do it, don't bother. Just play some music and watch it. Over here, this is something I like doing. First of all, we've got the tree here that I've just worked on. We've got a light spot at the base of that tree. Then we've got light coming across here. This is all to lead you around. You see, I want you to go and find other places to look at in the landscape. In other words, be tempted to go off the beaten path occasionally. So we have a path going up here, and I think a little tree at the end, which at the moment is floating in the air. So I'm going to connect that to the planet. I'm just going to do that at the bottom. A few little dots, bit of paint there, and I'm going to smudge the base in a minute, and then just pull your finger across, like so. And it brings it down to earth. Actually puts a little bit of light on the ground. The light that's above that is sort of interesting. Maybe that's going off, maybe the path is going around another corner over there, apart from going off this way. What I wouldn't do is take this path right off the picture. That'll lead people away. It's all, it's all to guide people around the picture. So let's see, what else can I just do now? I just want to do a few. Right, so we've got this tree. Similar treatment to the other one. So if people get fed up with looking at the tree on the left, they can go and look at the tree on the right. So you have a choice of trees in my paintings. So here, again, a little bit of light just touching the odd spot. In places where you just want to tell people that there's something happening. In other words, if you have a little branch coming up like that, you don't have to paint that branch forever, disappearing up the picture, and try and find somewhere to finish it off. You just need to indicate that that is possible. So in other words, if I have that little bit of light there, I could then have a little bit just up here. Because the bit in between, this bit, this bit, and the little spot of light I've just put above it, which is actually not very strong, so I'll make it a bit stronger. So a little bit of light just there. That connects the two together. So even if some of the branch disappears, your brain fills in the gap, and it's basically called undrawn detail. So there are other branches there that I think could probably do with a more interesting life. So let's just put a few little highlights on those. And again, a bit of undrawn detail, a little hint of a branching off. I nearly said a branch twigging off. I suppose you can say a twig branching off, but not the other one. Anyway, up here, let's have some light there, just a bit. The odd spot. Maybe a bit stronger there. Now down the bottom, again, I think, connect it to the planet. Just make sure that the brain is going to relate the two together. I hope that's all clear. So what have we got to do now? We've got that field between the two. I hope I've made that more interesting in there by putting a slight mist on the horizon. I've got a little bit of yellow in the painting here. If you look in part one, you can see how that's applied, and it's basically just slapped on and left, and then things put over it. Rather than paint trees and then try and paint the stuff behind the trees individually, it's much quicker to do it this way. Put down your, think of it in layers. So the furthest thing away is the sort of light yellow on the ground, and then something in the foreground goes over it. That gives you perspective. Okay, now the tree over here, I'm gonna treat that. It's almost what I call a stopper. And by a stopper, I mean something in the picture at the edge that stops people from going out of the picture. Now it's got a nice bit of light trunk, but I think I'm just going to sort of take it up a little bit more. So it's a birch tree. Let's have another branch next to it like so. Of course birch is one of the easiest trees to paint because the trunks are white. Okay, now let me see, what else can I do? Okay, I was going to work around the actual trees, but I'm not going to now. Change my mind. I'm going to leave them slightly fuzzy. And maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but I do quite like that soft look. It sort of almost gives the appearance of wind blowing in the trees. Right then, so thank you for watching. I'll turn the camera around so that you get a full frontal view. As I said at the beginning, I've moved the camera to the right so that it's easier for me to keep out the way. Hope that worked. And let's see what it looks like. I hope you've enjoyed it, I hope you've learnt something, and don't forget, clouds aren't difficult. They're only difficult when you think they are. So relax and start to think of your painting as fun, and that will actually help, trust me. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.